Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 1931 Bentley 4.5 litre Supercharged, or more commonly known as the Bentley Blower. And the standard 4.5 litre was produced from 1927 to 1931, with this version introduced in 1929 and also finishing in 1931. 720 were produced, with 55 of them being supercharged. And this was basically made to compete at 24 Hours of Le Mans, as it was seen as a reputation-raising thing to do and win at Le Mans back in the day, with the likes of Bugatti being really rather successful and elevating their standard reputation far and above anything else that they actually made. And this car was actually successful at Le Mans. It won in 1928, and it came second, third and fourth in 1929 behind the equally successful Bentley Speed 6. And but that was only the standard 4.5 litre. This supercharged version was not quite as successful in terms of motorsport. Its most notable success was coming in second place at the French Grand Prix in 1930. And the reason for that lack of success was down to reliability issues with that supercharger added on. The standard 4.5 litre was really rather reliable, but that supercharger added an inherent amount of unreliability to the car, which is a shame, because this car was significantly more powerful than the standard version. And even though that supercharger did incur some understeer with the fact that the car had to have the supercharger added onto the end of the crankshaft, because Mr. Bentley wasn't so keen on forced induction. He always thought that bigger engines were more preferable than forced induction. So they had to stick it on the end of the crankshaft in front of the radiator, so it induced some extra understeer in the car, but the advantages were more than noticeable in terms of power, as the standard 4.5 litre produced 110 horsepower, whereas this produced 175 horsepower, 310 pounds-feet of torque from its 4.4 litre supercharged inline 4 engine. Now I know it's called the 4.5 litre, but they merely rounded it up because it sounded a little bit better. But that's a massive sized engine for only 4 cylinders, far and above anything that you could find today that is only an inline 4. But that's plenty of power, especially for 1931. And even though that is less power than the likes of the Bentley 8 litre, which is also from 1931, this weighs a significant amount less, about 1,000 pounds plus less. So this is a significantly faster car than the 8 litre, and it's a far more sporty car than that 8 litre. That 8 litre was pretty much just a luxury car that just so happened to have a big engine and a lot of power, whereas this has a sizable engine and a lot of power, but is also more focused in terms of obviously racing and also being in a bit more sporty. So I love this vehicle to bits, quite frankly. It's easily top 5 favourite car on this game. Whether or not it's a car that's new to the game or not, it's still a favourite of mine. And the interior is pretty basic, as you can see, but it's got every kind of dial you can imagine to try and tell you everything. So it's got miles per hour, you got your amp meters, you've got your revolutions per minute, you've got temperature, you've got a clock there, and then you've got your oil temperature, oil pressure and oil temperature, I think, to the side there, and then you've got your buttons, etc. And you've got the gear stick to the right of you in the beside the wheel, but you've also got the handbrake on the outside. So a little bit inconvenient in that kind of respects, I imagine, but a handbrake in terms of racing really isn't all that necessary. And then you've obviously got the steps to get you up, and even though obviously it looks like a lot of other cars from the time, I still like the way it looks. It's a really rather classic. Now not every supercharged version came with the casing around the supercharger. A lot of them had it exposed, as you will see in plenty of pictures online. But I'm really glad to put this on the game, and there are obviously other classic cars like this from the day that I would also like on this game, including the Bentley Speed 6, which, like I said, was also successful at Le Mans. So hope that they bring more cars out from this period on this game, because there are plenty out there. But nonetheless, let's get this out onto the open road and see what it can do. So having less than 200 horsepower and weighing 4,395 pounds is bound to not give you the best acceleration ever, but for a car from 1931 it really does shift a lot better than you'd ever expect it to. 0 to 60 in 10.4 seconds, got to 139 seconds and it going to a top speed of 104 miles an hour. Now, granted, that is the same top speed as the 8 litre, but its acceleration is far better, as the 8 litre can only do up to 16 seconds, and 0 to 100, and I think in about 50 seconds. And yeah, this is not only noticeably quicker than the 8 litre, but it's noticeably more sporty, more fun to drive, and yeah, a lot more exciting as well. Now, yeah, you can tend to notice that understeer induced by the supercharger being way up front, but for the most part you just have to deal with oversteer and plenty of body roll. But that, again, that's to be expected. It is a car with really rather lacking in the technology department in terms of suspension and tyres and brakes, drum brakes all around by the way, and elliptical leaf springs. But again, it's a car from 1931. You can't really expect it to be handling anywhere near as good as even a modern hot hatchback, let alone modern sports cars from today. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with how it handles. It's fun, it's a bit of a challenge, and yeah, it handles completely differently to pretty much everything else on this game, so I'm all fine with that. And then the fact that the engine makes all sorts of weird noises that you wouldn't hear today, because obviously it's such a large 4-cylinder engine. You can't really hear the supercharger. I've driven this car for a lot of the time ever since I found it as a barn find after buying Bamber Castle, but I've never really been able to hear the supercharger. I imagine it's quite a low pressure one, but it obviously gave the advantage of a 65 extra horsepower over the standard 4.5 litre, and even though I don't have torque figures for that standard 4.5 litre engine, I imagine this is plenty more over that as well, because, you know, 65 extra horsepower is bound to give you some extra torque on top of that. So yeah, just a shame really that this wasn't as successful as the standard version, because yeah, I imagine with all this extra power and all this extra torque, it would have been really rather good. And this even has an extra 45 horsepower over the racing version of the standard 4.5 litre, which had 130 horsepower, and the racing version of this had 240 horsepower. So yeah, you can only imagine how quick this was actually be. And even though it wasn't successful in terms of racing, it did actually set a land speed record of 138 miles an hour, which is mightily impressive from a car from this time. And yeah, it's just a window into a car that you just don't see anymore, obviously, because it was so rare. There were only 55 of them made, and I'm pretty sure there was even less than that now. And yeah, just really glad that it's on the game, and hopefully it will be in a future Forza Motorsport game, because I imagine this will be even more fun to drive around on the track, as it is just as much fun just to race around on the roads. But yeah, great vehicle, easily one of my favourites on this game. And yeah, even though it did obviously cost 10 billion to buy the castle and unlock this barn find, it's more than worth it, quite frankly. And yeah, you probably could find it on for a lot cheaper on the auction house, but obviously if you want to get the achievements of, you know, finding all the barn finds, then you will obviously have to buy the castle itself. But you get an achievement for buying the castle as well, so it's not all bad in that front. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.